She's the poster girl for the Australian Open. Do Munster fans even care about the Gobler situation? Well, we're going to be chatting about all that with Sean Ingle of The Guardian just after 8 o'clock. We've got Luke Jensen talking about a pretty crazy first week down at the Australian Open. That to come before 9 as well. As always on a Thursday, Graham Hunter on Spanish football. We'll chat to Paddy Agnew about the falling attendances in Serie A. And John Giles will join us at 7:30. John was the man who signed Cyril Regis for West Brom. We'll talk about that, about Martin O'Neill and his return as Republic of Ireland manager. We'll get John's thoughts on VAR and also on Liverpool's performance against Manchester City last weekend. 53106 is the text number, at Off the Ball on Twitter. Good evening if you're watching us on Periscope, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, if you're watching us on YouTube, if somehow you've stumbled upon this, God help you. If you're listening on the wireless, as I think Joe Malloy is fond of saying from time to time. We've got Cliona Foley, a presenter of Off the Bench, with us. How are you?
Hello, good evening.
First time in a news round?
It is, yeah. First time in your fancy studio as well.
It's pretty
scary,
slick, isn't it? Did you bring any memorabilia or anything?
I certainly did.
Wait a second.
Wow.
I have
This
a
wasn't
piece
even
of
teed up.
memorabilia for you.
Wow.
Like all sports
Favours
nerds, I collect mad, crazy things.
I'm just
you
about
can
to
open
open
it.
it. I'm going to
yeah,
open it live
you can
on air.
open it live on air.
I'm a bit worried. It looks like an invoice, which around here wouldn't be at all a surprise. Wow, this is spectacular.
Well, you can call me nosy, curious, whatever, but I've been in here a few times before, and I've noticed that you have very little, if anything, female in sports memorabilia in here. So I thought I'd bring in something.
General.
So Nathan, do you want to tell us what it is? What it looks like?
What it looks like is the final official printout
The
from
result
the
sheet, yeah.
World Athletics Championship 2009 in Berlin, with Derval O'Rourke, national record 12.67 seconds. In fourth place.
And people will say why. And I actually have probably got the result sheet from when she won European silvers, and I also probably still have the result sheet from when she won a European World Indoor Gold from 2006. But I think this is her best performance ever. If you look who is behind her in that, you will see Sally McKellen, as she was then, exactly, is there,
right up here.
who went on to win Olympic gold and 2 world championships. And also, I think the behind her as well was Dawn Fraser behind her, who was the reigning Olympic champion at the time. So even though O'Rourke was 4th in that final, I still regard it as her best performance ever, because for an Irish sprinter to compete at that level and come that close to a medal, and also yet again, as she did throughout her career, a new Irish record in a final. She was a phenomenal athlete and had brilliant focus. And
from lane 1 as well.
From lane 1, which was outrageous, and she barely made. She got in as the last loser. She got in as the bottom fastest loser. So, on all form, she should never have come 4th in that final. And yet again, and she'd been injured that summer as well. So she's an extraordinary athlete, and I thought that might be a nice one for you to have in here.
Well, thank you very much.
Framed it and everything.
Where am I going to place this, JP? Where is the most appropriate spot to place this? I'll put it right behind me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right behind me. Right now, framed and everything
for you. Yeah,
definitely our favourite guest so far, because Padraig Harrington, like, for all the great things Padraig Harrington has done, Joe Malloy put the very hard sell on him right at the start of the newspaper review with Paul Kimmage, and he pointed out the boots, Conor Murray's boots from the last Lions test against New Zealand, that are right behind you. We've got Andy Lee's proper belt. WBA world title belt. We've got a US Open flag from Graham McDowell. We've got all sorts of nice little bits of memorabilia that we're starting to gather. Joe was just pointing this out bit by bit. No suggestion back from Paul.
Harrington gave you nothing.
I was waiting for the. What do you want? Do you want the club? Do you want the flag?
He could give you one of these putting greens from his house.
Any of these things. So,
let's not burn the bridge yet, Nathan.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
The night is still young. Padraig could come through.
It's fine. He will deliver the goods. I've no doubt about it. So there's a lot to get through on tonight's show. We're going to be talking to Sean Ingle, who wrote a really interesting piece this week in The Guardian about basically our attitude to doping, and he had quite a bit of academic evidence in there as well. It was all hung about Maria Sharapova's return to the Australian Open, which I think most people would look at and think has been slightly over the top, that there's no sense of embarrassment on her part, which there hasn't been.
But not only that, Nathan, but they used her to launch the event.
She is the poster girl for the Australian Open.
They used her before the event to launch the event at which she failed her test, if I remember, a year ago. It's an extraordinary attitude, I think. And it's something that struck me during the week with the whole Grobler story as well. I think in some sports maybe there's a different attitude to doping, and I think in some team sports as well, maybe there's a different attitude to doping. I covered track and field for a long time. That's why I have that particular interest. And I know that when Irish athletes who failed drugs tests, Cathal Lombard, Martin Fagan, Stephen Colvert, who I think was a very, very interesting case. When they came back, they all found, that other athletes really, did not take well to them. And I wonder, we saw Munster players obviously coming out this week and speaking in support of their player. But I wondered, how do they feel really? And is the attitude slightly different? Because if it happens in a team situation as well, like there's a whole army of PR and all of that, whereas a lot of individual athletes in individual sports, they don't have that sort of, they don't have any, a lot of them most have very little money, and they have no PR people, and they've none of that support around them.
Yeah, it does seem as though it would be very different in a team setting, in that somebody right at the top of the organisation has made the decision to sign somebody who had served a ban for doping, and being part of a team means you sometimes have to put up with things you're not happy with. Now, how happy you are then to have to go and speak in public and say this man is of Munster, he's bought into everything we're about, who knows? But they clearly feel that being part of a team is sometimes you just got to suck this up, rightly or wrongly.
Yeah, and the Sean Ingle piece, he wrote a piece earlier this week, and I thought it was a very interesting piece, and he was referring, there's been a few bits of research, including one in Norway a couple of years ago, or maybe last year, but they seem to say that if you're a big fan of the sport, we would imagine that if there's doping in it, you get upset about it, but the research is starting to show that actually, it doesn't affect the numbers going to the Tour de France, it doesn't affect the numbers going to supporting different sports. So maybe, and I thought about this a lot during the week, maybe we're all a little bit biased and protective when it comes to our sports, or the ones that we care about. And I think the Munster fans probably this week were very defensive as well, and they kind of, I just think sometimes if you're passionate about something, you are inclined to be probably a little bit overly defensive about it.
They feel it's an attack on the larger concept of Munster rather than an attack on the decision to hire a player who's been convicted of doping. And a lot of people have there was a great article about it in terms of football today as well. The author of it remains a mystery to me. I can't remember, but I think Rich Joddy put it out earlier on today, just about the tribalism involved in football and sporting, and turning a blind eye to absolutely anything negative that can be said about your team. And that's the case with Munster. Like, there's an inability on some people's behalf, not everybody's, to separate the notion that you're attacking Munster or the notion that you're attacking the decision to hire somebody who served time for doping. The Sharapova thing is slightly different. Obviously it's an individual sport, but the WTA and the major tennis tournaments
and the sponsors,
like, they rely heavily on her presence just because she puts bums on seats. A lot of the tour, I would imagine, wish that wasn't the case. A lot of people would wish that there'd be other attractions in terms of people who are brilliant at the sport would be able to take the place of Sharapova. But until a situation arises whereby Gerbini Muguruza or Angelique Kerber or whoever else can put a string of wins together and become the thing on the tour, there's going to be no shirking the fact that Sharapova is the person that's putting people into
a lot even of the those on court post game tennis interviews as well. A lot of them are very soft, and
the interview that when she went on to, I think it was the Rod Laver Arena when she brought the trophy on ahead of it, and like the interview around it was like this opportunity you were given to have a break.
Yeah, to have a break. Exactly.
I haven't had a break since I was 4 years old. Like this was something I was keen to take advantage of.
Yeah, and there was an opportunity. I think I may be wrong on this, but I think it might have been the 50th anniversary of Billie Jean King's only Australian Open win. There was an opportunity there to take her and use her if they wanted to, just do something special this year. But I just think the Sharapova thing just shows to me that there is there's just a very strange value system going on.
There's an odd value system in tennis, full stop, when you see the fact that there is talk of a potential male boycott given the disparity in the prize money and how it's meted out, etc., etc. There's also talk of female players, or even male players as well, perhaps boycotting the Margaret Court Arena given her outspoken nature on same-sex marriage in Australia. But when it comes to somebody who's doped in the sport and dragged the actual sports name through the muck, they kind of go, yeah, fair enough. Just weird.
What's your take on the Grobbler issue? Because I can't remember a story that has hung around for we're into well over a week of this now, and if anything, the interest level is just intensifying with it.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people have spoken a lot of sense on it, and somebody like Donal Lenihan, who's I think is second to none in terms of his, analysis on rugby, and his sort of fair-mindedness as well. People like him and Keith Wood have all said, Munster shouldn't play him, and I think they're probably going to play him again this weekend. Are they in an A game?
Yeah, they're going to play him in an A game. That in itself is interesting, I thought, and I had that thought as well of maybe the smart move here for Munster is they just keep him under the radar for the rest of the season. He doesn't line out, and we all just eventually move on from this. So he hasn't actually played a Pro 14 or a Champions Cup game. He's never in the true Munster colours. But at the same time, when we go back to the team aspect of this, if they have put Conor Murray and Peter O'Mahony out, and they have gone out in front of the media and said, he is one of us, and they have taken the decision that he's bought into the ethos of Munster, well, therefore, doesn't he have to be treated the same as everybody else? Suddenly, if they choose not to select him, are those players in that Munster dressing room looking around going, oh, wait a second, we were told we're a team, we're a group, we're a squad, we've all bought into this, and now we've decided, after signing him, we're going to hang him out to dry? There is a problem. Issue? Yeah, well, there probably is there is a problem there as well. I think. First of all, I think probably the one who needs to answer a lot of questions probably is Razzie Erasmus, who's gone. I think they could have done themselves a big favour if they had brought the athlete out and he had done an interview at some point, rather than sort of glossing over his past. So I think those two things could have made a big difference. But I think, again, like I said to you, I think there's an awful lot of double standards at work here. If he played for the first team and he lined out, would the fans all salute him when he comes out on the field? Is that the sort of thing? Because if that happened, that is exactly what those of us who are worried about his presence would say. That's what, I think if you're passionate about a sport, you do not want to see it tainted. And I've seen athletics destroyed by people who've failed drug tests. And the problem with that is it raises questions about every other single athlete. So every time an athlete did well, the first question editors would say to you is, are they on the stuff? Are they on the balloon juice? Are they on, are they dopers, right? So the presence of dopers means that you ask questions about clean athletes. And I think that's the danger for Munster. I think, on an ethical basis, should they have signed him? I don't believe they should. That's a personal view. This big question then of, do you deserve a second chance in life? Can you have redemption? Should there be redemption for you? I used to always, I've puzzled over it for a long time, but I've seen athletics so destroyed by drugs that now I'm actually in favour of life bans. Right.
If somebody has deliberately, and it's proven that they have deliberately taken a steroid, then I'm in favour of life bans, because I think that's the only way you can stop it.
Yeah, this isn't something that turned up in a supplement and he took by accident. This was done on purpose, and it was an injectable steroid.
It's something he admitted to.
It's something obviously he admitted to. But ultimately, if he served his time and come back, and given I've seen a lot of the reaction that's come in, especially on Twitter and on text, to this show over the past couple of days. If he does line out at Thomond Park, I genuinely don't think the Munster fans will give him a hard time, and nor should they, because he's after making his way back. He is, you would imagine, learned from his mistakes, and ultimately they'd be booing the wrong player. What they should be booing is essentially the decision to sign him.
Yeah.
That's the mistake here.
But my point, Richie, is Martin Fagan deliberately took EPO, an Irish marathon runner at the time. He said he was depressed, was suffering from depression, was struggling with his fitness, all those reasons. And I don't think the general public had any kind of sympathy for Martin Fagan. But yet, Munster fans seem to have lots of sympathy here and say, give him a second chance. And I just think there's an imbalance there.
I think all the attention over the past couple of days, couple of weeks, has actually built up a groundswell of a degree of sympathy anyway.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it would be interesting, and the
him,
suggestion seems to be that once the Six Nations gets underway, that Grobler will end up playing for Munster in the Pro 14, and it does feel as though this has become a Munster against the world type issue, that in fact, rather than getting a polite applause, that there might be a bit of a cheer.
Everybody's against us now come this game against Castra on Sunday, and the crowd will be louder by 15% than ordinarily it would have been, and more G'd up, and I think weirdly enough this will probably work in their favour this weekend.
And I don't think it's an anti-Munster thing. I actually think that people should look at it as it's an Irish rugby thing, that somebody was brought in that had served a ban. Why wasn't discussed, and why didn't we find out more about it?
Yeah, so we're going to have Sean Ingle after 8 o'clock, and we're going to be talking about that greater issue as to ultimately why more people just don't seem to care about doping, that they're willing to turn a blind eye for the sport that they like, and maybe look at other sports and turn their nose up at that. But ultimately why it is quite parochial, and we'll get into all that, sponsors, events, and reaction from other players. So that's coming up with Sean Ingle just after 8 o'clock. But it is that man.
Yeah, we start with
who is the top story once again.
Yeah, he continues to wait, as you mentioned, for his senior Munster debut. The South African lock has been named in the Munster A side for their BNI Cup encounter with Ospreys tomorrow, and it means Grobler, of course, won't be considered for Sunday's final Champions Cup pool match at home to Castres, which will be live on Sundays off the ball. Munster, of course, as you mentioned, come in for intense criticism for signing a player who previously served a 2-year doping ban. And speaking on this morning's OTB AM, Alan Quinlan says he feels Grobler should be given a second chance.
I don't think he should have been signed, but I think he should be allowed to play now. It's too late just to rip up the guy's contract. But I would love to hear him come out, and maybe that will be something that Munster will allow, to bring this out in the open, to have a proper conversation, to say, look, this is what I feel about it now, this is what I was thinking at the time, and this is what I want to happen for the future, that I want to be part of change or stopping this situation.
I think we do need to hear from him.
Yeah, I think that would have definitely changed things.
It'll deflate things somewhat, at least, anyway. Yeah. John Walters' injury-ravaged season continues. Unfortunately, the Burnley forward has undergone surgery on a knee cartilage problem and could be out for up to 8 weeks. Walters has only managed 9 minutes as a substitute after returning from a 4-month absence at Christmas. He had a knee problem as well there. His manager Sean Dyche says it was better they acted on the injury sooner rather than later.
He's a bit worried about earlier in the week. There was a very, very small kind of split in the cartilage, but very, very small. But it was annoying him, so the decision was made, but certainly from himself as well, because he's old enough and wise enough now to get that tidied up. You know, literally millimetres, but it was annoying him, and him and the surgeon decided it's best to do it. You know, it's a minor tidy up, but it still needed doing.
Part of me wonder if John Walters inflicted this injury upon himself when he saw he was about to be sold off to Sunderland for the rest of the season. Yeah,
it appeared as if that, like the word of here today is that move seemed to be very much on the cards for those who may have sniffed at it and gone, why would John Walters go to a struggling side in the Championship? But now he's gotten a decent way out of it. He's going to have his feet up for the rest of the transfer window.
Text in, what about the case of Carlo Del Fava? I don't hear you banging on about that, says Sean in Limerick. Carlo Del Fava, who served a drugs ban in South Africa and then ended up signing for Ulster. We're actually going to be talking to the man himself on tomorrow's OTB AM at around 7:45. They'll be getting underway with Adrian and Owen.
Yeah, plenty of transfer news knocking around this evening as well, Nathan. Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger says Alexis Sanchez's much anticipated move to Manchester United is likely to happen. He's also confirmed the Chile forward will join Jose Mourinho's side in exchange for Henrik Mkhitaryan. Wenger insists they have money to meet these wage demands and there'll be enough left over for more signings. John Cross intimating this evening that deal mightn't be done by midday tomorrow, which means they won't be registered in time for the weekend, but it is going to be over the line in the next 36 hours or so. And the Arsenal boss says he's been a long admirer of Mkhitaryan and Mkhitaryan of Arsenal.
Yeah, we played many times against him when he was at Dortmund, and he certainly appreciated the quality of our games and the way we play football. So that's why certainly loves the club as well.
Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, meanwhile, he appears to be Arsenal bound. He's been left out of the Borussia Dortmund squad for their Bundesliga trip to Hertha Berlin tomorrow. The club's sporting director, Borussia Dortmund that is, Michael Zorc, claims the Gabon striker is not fully focused. It's reported that Olivier Giroud could head the other way as part of that deal. Andy Carroll's proposed move from West Ham to Chelsea looks likely to have fallen through. The striker suffered an ankle injury and could face up to 6 weeks out of action. Chelsea had reportedly made contact with West Ham about the striker earlier this week, with a fee of £20 million likely to see him leave the London Stadium.
So if your plan for the remainder of the season was Andy Carroll, and listen, peak Andy Carroll, he gets injured as he's on the verge of this move. Like, what's your plan B? Who is the next Andy Carroll? Who is the next 6'4", 18 stone behemoth of a man?
Before I put my hand up, I will say that
I like the flowing locks as well of Andy Carroll.
Sorry, I've let you down on that front. Apparently Llorente is still a viable option for Chelsea. Conte is still very much, he tried
to go back to Spurs,
to have Llorente go to Chelsea, to leave Spurs, go to Chelsea. Like, apparently he had been mooted. I'm just saying what's possibly out there. But if you're, as you mentioned, your option is Andy Carroll, what's next after
Peter Crouch?
You never know. You never know. I think Stoke could be glad of the money if Crouchy does go, because they're just bringing in fullbacks on the free at the moment. So
we're going to be talking VAR with John Giles.
Yeah, Chelsea boss Antonio Conte says the officials made a big mistake by not awarding his side a penalty in their FA Cup third round victory over Norwich last night. They eventually won their replay 5-3 on spot kicks with the match after finishing 1-1, but Conte wasn't happy about a combination of Graham Scott and the video assistant referee, who failed to correct decision even to book Willian for diving in extra time. It was a foul by Tim Klose in the box and no penalty was given.
Would you all stop saying Munster fans are okay about Grobler? I, as a huge Munster fan, don't want him playing for my team. Razzie should never have signed him, and Nucifora and the IRFU should never have okayed it. It goes against the Munster ethos, says Susan.
There's somebody who should face, rather than Grobler as well, as somebody who should be put in front of a microphone this week as well as David Nucifora. And the thought process, if Razzie's gone and Nucifora was potentially involved in this signing,
was this not a Munster decision? Was that not what?
That's what they're saying.
It had to be signed off on by the IRFU.
Yeah. So.
What is on the latest Off the Bench podcast, Cliona?
Our latest Off the Bench, our first of the year. We have two big interviews. One is with Jenny Egan, the top Irish female canoeist, who has done really well, and last year she won 5 medals. She was on 5 international medals, including a medal at the World Marathon Championship. So long interview with her out in her club in Salmon Leap.
Is she looking towards the Olympics?
She is, but she's unusual because a lot of her medals this year were won at 5,000 metres plus, and the Olympics are 200 and 500 metres. So, but she says canoeists can do both. Right. So that was part of the discussion. And the other interview is with a woman called Sharon Hutchinson. And if anybody is interested in or has been following a website called sportswomen.ie, Sharon set it up 3 years ago. She's a woman from Cork, completely voluntarily, felt there wasn't enough coverage for women's sport, and set up this website. But she's just given it up. She's found she was devoting a lot of time to it. There was no money in it, and she kind of felt that she had run her course with it, but she has thrown it out there and said if somebody wants to take it on, they can take it on. So,
are you tempted?
No, we're doing enough. I think we're doing enough with Off the Bench.
I didn't think you were going to say she's given it up because she felt her job was done and that suddenly the amount of coverage was at a level. No,
not at all. But she's got a new job, just really interesting. There's a very interesting chat in it because we often wonder, are we all talking to ourselves in terms of people who promote women in sport? Sometimes you just feel, how much support is there out there, and there's a good story in it about her website going down during Storm Ophelia and what happened.
All right, we're going to play you some of that chat with Sharon Hutchinson later on, around about 8:30, after we talk to Sean Ingle. Cliona, thanks a lot for joining us, and thanks a lot for the gift. It is much appreciated. You've set the standard for anybody who's coming in to be a guest on Off the Ball in recent weeks.
Framed.
Yeah, and you're going to be back Sunday. You're going to be on the Sunday newspaper review with Joe and with Declan Lynch. Richie, you're going to be here for the evening as well, keeping us up to date with all the live sport. But up next, we're going to be talking to John Giles.
Off the Ball on News Talk, in association with the Air Sport app, allowing you to cast your favourite sporting action from your tablet or mobile phone straight to your TV. News Talk Breakfast.
It needs no more than a standard weather warning. It's not even a low pressure with a storm centre, just a squeeze in the isobars. What's next? Naming raindrops. It's ridiculous. Now, that was very uncharacteristic, unexpected sort of criticism. How did you react to that, by the way, Evelyn?
We treasure all our citizens equally, and we issued those warnings because of very high sea and very dangerous conditions in